It's what Einstein said centuries later. Imagination is more important than knowledge. It's the law of attraction. You become what you give your attention to. Hi everyone and welcome back to John Florio channel. I am Mary and I'm here to talk about John Florio. I have made several videos in which I have explained you the art of memory and how John Florio and Giordano Bruno use it. But was the art of memory common in the Renaissance? Did just John Florio and few of his contemporaries use it, or was it a sought-after skill? Today I will tell you secret stories about the art of memory and how it wasn't just the art of storing words and images, but something more, a way to connect with the outside world. But before we start, if you are new here, don't forget to subscribe, and if you want, to like, to share and to comment the video. And now let's start! Was the art of memory common and popular in the Renaissance? Yes, it was. Why? Because the art of memory was rooted in the revival of the classic techniques or rhetoric, which was taught in school. In an era in which books were rare and paper was expensive, people needed to store information in their mind palace. This art, once mastered, provided easy and ready ways to direct one's train of thought. Whether based in rooms in a house or recognizable places in a familiar street, order was the primary concern when using the art of memory. I have shown you in the past videos that John Florio used the art of memory and mentions the art of memory in his works. But what about his contemporaries? Did they use the art of memory? Did they mention the art of memory? Let's start with Philip Sidney. Philip Sidney, in his work Defense of Poesy, mentions the art of memory through a poetic image. He lays unusual emphasis on the art of memory throughout his work. He mentions the rooms divided in many places and every word having his natural seat. Sidney adapts to poetry the commonplace that writing resembles an art of memory. But how? Stanzas function as loci and rhythmical and rhyme words as securely placed images. Edmund Spenser also mentions the art of memory in The Faerie Queene. For Spenser, in fact, poetry itself is an art of memory, placing images in our memory like an ongoing process of recalling the ruins of time. Robert Flood, doctor and friend of John Florio, built the theatre of memory. What is the theatre of memory? Before mentioning Robert Flood, it is important to talk about the man who originally created the theatre of memory, Giulio Camillo. Giulio Camillo was a humanist and a philosopher. He is famous today for his Teatro della Memoria, theatre of memory. His idea was to build a real theatre, intended to be the mnemonic imprint of all universal knowledge and organized through patterns of associative memory. But how this theatre of memory would work? Camillo's big project aimed to evoke and possess all human wisdom and was the reversal of the traditional theatre. Why? Because while in the common theatre, the audience stands in the stall and the actor was on the stage, with Camillo's theatre it was the reverse. The audience was on the stage and the performance took place in the stalls. The stalls were in fact divided into 7 large steps, each marked with a different image, each divided into 7 parts, corresponding to the 7 planets. At this point, we will have 49 intersections. Each of these was marked by another mnemonic image taken from mythology. Each represented a part of human knowledge. For example, cooking, theology, sex, and so on. This was Camillo's project. Those who consulted the theatre would tap into universal knowledge and run through all human wisdom in their mind. Now, did Camillo really build a theatre? It has been suggested that he found a patron, Francesco I, son of Carlo de Valois, and that a real wooden theatre was actually built. Camillo's theatre remains one of the most fascinating objects the Italian Renaissance left to European culture, and it reached England with Robert Fludd. Robert Fludd was a doctor and philosopher who worked at the court of James I. He built Theatrum Orbi with the same idea of Giulio Camillo, a theatre in which you could store all human knowledge. Fludd Theatre had 5 different entrances. He stored words, dialogues, part of speech in the spaces in which plays were enacted. Now, Robert Fludd wrote that for his theatre of memory he used a real theatre. And what happened in 1599? The Globe Theatre was born. King James I contributed a considerable amount towards the cost of the Globe's rebuilding, and Fludd dedicated his work Theatrum Orbi on the theatre of memory to the king. And we know that King James I was also the patron of the king's players. So what theatre could be more suitable than the Globe, since the very name suggested Flood project? If we think of a world of words in which John Florio used mnemonic system to store an astonishing amount of words, 150,000 English words, the Globe has the same idea. A globe, a word, the theatre of memory. The Globe represented a universal representation of the vicissitudes of human life. And the king's players would stage Hamlet, a play in which memory is present and is full of references to the art of memory of Giordano Bruno.
Remember thee! I vow, poor ghost, while memory holds a seat in this distracted globe, remember thee!
And in this perspective, we shouldn't forget that the art of memory is not just the art of storing words and information in our mind palace, it's something more. For Giordano Bruno, this art was a way to connect the material world, our world, with celestial world, with the outside world. It was a combination of both natural magic and the art of memory. There is an important idea that Giordano Bruno shared in his works. It's that theatre imitates life, or that life imitates theatre. For Bruno, as he explicitly states in the introductory letter to Sir Philip Sidney in Heroic Frenzy, all that make us both laugh and cry in this theatre of the world. He also says that the shadows of our mental theatre are far more important, are far more real than the shadowy theatre of life. What does this mean? It means what your mind produces, what your memory produces, is far more important than reality, because what you think, your thoughts, create your reality. It's what Einstein said centuries later: imagination is more important than knowledge. It's the law of attraction. You become what you give your attention to. Thanks to our mind, we are capable of extraordinary things, to place our desires into image in our theatre of the mind. What we call real life is nothing but a chaotic play of obscure actions and relationships, which are only given a clear shape in the life of our imagination and illuminated by the rays of the universal intellect and reason. Stay resolute. Bye!